Welcome to another edition of the College Basketball Net Profit Show, Tuesday, January 10th, Pub Sports Radio. Ian Cameron, Conor Mack back for the first show this week. We did not have a show yesterday. It was a very light card because of the College Football National Championship game, which turned out to be an absolute dud. But nevertheless, congratulations to the Georgia Bulldogs. But now it's time to turn the calendar. Football's over, at least in the college world. It's basketball time now. From here on out, college basketball taking center stage, and we have ourselves a pretty interesting Tuesday card. We've got some Big East games, Big 10, SEC, Big 12, ACC, go Mountain West, mostly at some smaller conferences as well. So let's get started with Butler and St. John's. Big East action. We've got St. John's 3.5 point home favorites in this game, 148.5 the total in this game. I mean, these are two teams that, hard to make heads or tails of them. They can look excellent one game, not so good the next. I'd probably in this game, lean a little bit to St. John's. Although I will say last year they had a pretty good success actually against Butler, 75-72 and 91-57 victories. So it was pretty dominant in favor of St. John's. Worth noting, too, we saw the meeting in St. John's last year. Butler had no answer. 91 points put up on the board by St. John's in that game. We've seen the St. John's Red Storm go over the total in 3 straight games, 5 straight losses for them during that span. This is probably a winnable game for them just because Butler's been a dumpster fire for the most part, too. They're only 2-5 in their last 7 games. The only victories were DePaul and Georgetown, the two bottom feeders of the Big East, essentially. So I think it's an opportunity for St. John's to bounce back. I lean to them. I'm still not rushing to lay 3.5 with them, but they have owned Butler last year. They dominated the 2 meetings. I could only look at the Red Storm. I am going to look at the over. I do like that. The total's gone up here. I think it's gone up for a reason. For as good as Butler started the season defensively, man, they've been picked apart the last few games. Creighton put 78 up on them. Providence 72. Seton Hall is not even a great offensive team, 76 points against Butler in their last game. So I think this game gets up and over and probably into the 150s. What do you think here, C-Mac?
Yeah, I think so too. When I talk St. John's, I see the 140s. You got to go over. I think it's just too low with the way they play defense and the way they can score. Butler on the road, I don't want them. They haven't been really good at home either at all lately. I think our guy Slow Jams put it in the chat. 3.5 is short, and this is a game St. John's needs badly. I know they covered, but they lost the other day on Saturday. They need a win here, but that team total at 76, I mean, they should get to 80 in this one. Even the Butler team total might get there, but they struggle to score. And just 2 teams, I still lean over, but Butler, this under team, it's been under even lately, and St. John's dead to the over. They're all leans for me in this one. I don't know if I want to take this full game total or the St. John's team total over here.
All right, we go to South Carolina and Kentucky. 20-point home favorites, Kentucky, 132, the total in this one. I mean, if you want to lay 20 points with a team that has covered 1-point spread in their last 10 games, go for it. I'm not doing that personally. And Kentucky, look, South Carolina, let's put it this way. There's one theoretical possibility where Kentucky can cover this number. They bring their A game, which we have not seen consistently, and South Carolina plays as poorly as they did in their last game against Tennessee. If that happens, Kentucky can cover this number and maybe destroy South Carolina. But I'm willing to bet that doesn't happen. I have not seen good enough out of Kentucky, home or on the road for whatever reason, to trust them right now. And again, we're not asking them to win a close game or win even somewhat comfortably. They have to absolutely eviscerate South Carolina if they're going to cover this number. And they're 1-9 against the spread in their last 10 games. You look at the victories they've had in conference play. Okay, they beat Louisville by 23. I don't think South Carolina is Louisville type of bad. And, of course, their last game, they were 10.5 point home favorites. Last home game, they were 10.5 point home favorites. They won by 3 against Louisville. They have not been covering numbers. South Carolina, now look, that was bad against Tennessee. They couldn't make a shot. It was an all-time horrible offensive performance, 12 of 48. They only scored 42 points in that game. Offense has always been up and down this year for the Gamecocks this year. No question about that. But I think they'll bounce back. I think they have to realize, look, we lost by 43 at home. That's an all-time embarrassment. We've got to play better. And if you actually look at them, they've been better on the road this year, South Carolina, believe it or not, than at home. At least from a point spread perspective, that has been true. At Vanderbilt, 10-point dogs. They lost by 5 in overtime. At UAB, they were 16-point dogs. They covered the number there. Georgetown, 5.5-point dogs, win the game outright. So this road underdog rule is actually somewhat profitable for South Carolina. Hold your nose. This is obviously not a great basketball team, but I'm taking a chance with the South Carolina side. Plus 20, daring a Kentucky team to win by this kind of margin when they haven't come close to doing so in recent games. What do you think here, C-Mac?
Yeah, Kentucky just got blasted, I'm glad that was all Alabama first half. They're just a no-show on the road again. Couldn't hit a shot early. Too big. Why do you want to back Kentucky laying these points? They just keep not covering the number. Like I said, I'm not going to go near them at all. Toppin's a question mark with a shoulder. I don't know if he goes or not. Yeah, South Carolina was so bad. That was the one problem with that number we talked about on Saturday. If they could score, they just struggle to score. But this Kentucky defense, at home will be better. But yeah, to me, it's lean the points, just too many at 20. And on the total, I'd be a little bit on the over. South Carolina's got to shoot a little bit better. Can they get a little over 60? Kentucky gets in the 70s. This gets over the total.
I think I do like the over the more I look into it. I was off the total initially, and then I started to get more interested in it, and now I'm looking even further into it now. 6 of the last 7 meetings have gone over the total, and we've seen some big-time overs the last. Now, again, Frank Martin's South Carolina team, he's not there anymore. They played a lot faster. This team doesn't, but still, they're not great defensively. We know Kentucky's had their defensive issues. The series history is still trended over, and Kentucky's actually gone over 4 of their last 5. And even that South Carolina game, despite an all-time wretched offensive performance by South Carolina, the game still crept over the numbers. So,
yeah, they gave up. Yeah, so
yeah, the over I think is worth a look. I agree. I'll probably add that to the bet card here for this game is over 131.5 here in this one. All right, next up here, Georgia Tech, Notre Dame. We've got Notre Dame 5-point home favorites, 136 the total. To me, this is just simple as flip a coin. I don't think there's much difference between these two teams. I'm taking +5 with Georgia Tech in a game that I think could come down to the wire. It's one of those situations, C-Mac, where if this was the shoe on the other foot and Georgia Tech was at home laying 5 at 5.5, I'd probably take Notre Dame as a road dog. But Georgia Tech is probably the team I'm looking at here in the road underdog role in this game. Notre Dame, I just don't trust them right now. They've lost 6 of their last 7. They haven't won in conference play. Miami, BC, North Carolina, they lose all 3. They're 1-6 straight up in ATS their last 7 games. Their only win is against the Jacksonville Dolphins, 59-43 on their home court. Give me Georgia Tech here. Again, there's not much difference between these two teams. I just feel flip a coin and taking more than a full possession of points in a game like this is, I think, worth a look. What do you think here, C-Mac?
There's no way. I guess this is at home would be the biggest for Notre Dame. But if they struggle shooting, it seems like they're done. It's just like live and die by the long shot. And if they're not there, it doesn't work for them. I'm not laying points with Notre Dame at all. Both these teams pretty good, with Notre Dame struggling, kind of slow. We know Georgia Tech, I lean a little bit under. I don't want to be involved with this game at all. But if I were a side, I'd look Georgia Tech, with the points here, the 5. But I'm way off this bad boy.
Yeah, what's funny? It's that it's not so much that they've changed their spots, Notre Dame defensively. They've sucked defensively all year, and they're still pretty bad. It's they can't make shots now all of a sudden. The last 4 games, the offense is just falling off a cliff. And you know what? One thing Georgia Tech can do sometimes is play decent defense. The better teams sometimes will rip them, but I don't know if Notre Dame is capable of doing that. So I would agree, dog and under for me in this one. I would agree. Next up here, as we continue along, we've got Michigan State and Wisconsin, little Big Ten battle here. Michigan State 1-point road favorites, 127 the total. Tyler Wall's status is obviously tantamount in this game, no question about it. We'll see if he plays. They say he's going to be a game time decision. If he suits up, and even if he doesn't suit up, this kind of feels from a Wisconsin standpoint like a great bounce back spot. On their home floor, They are 0-4 against the spread their last 4 games, so they haven't been good for their backers, but 22.5-point favorites, 20-point favorites, 13-point favorites in 3 of those games, 7.5-point road dog at Illinois. And I kind of thought Saturday, Connor, when we talked about that on the Pub Hub, you, me, and Cab, that that game was maybe a wake-up call for Illinois. I didn't want to step in front of Illinois in that game, even though they had been kind of struggling. And sure enough, Illinois wins and covers against Wisconsin. Now I think it's a bounce-back spot here for Wisconsin at home. And now we finally get Wisconsin at a good number, a good price. I mean, I never like laying points with this team, but give me +1 with the Badgers here on their home floor. A bounce-back spot for them. I know Michigan State's playing well. They've won 6 in a row, covered 5 of the 6. But they've still got to show on the road against a solid enough defensive team they can get it done. I don't know. The offense to me is still a little scattershot, rely too much on Walker, Hauser in particular to carry them offensively of this Michigan State team. Let's see how they fare here against a Wisconsin team. Probably brings a good effort after the loss at Illinois. And I think Wall's going to play. I mean, it hasn't been confirmed yet, but I think it's kind of trending toward him playing for Wisconsin. So it's definitely a nice little spot play for me here. Wisconsin, slight home underdog. What do you think here, C-Mac?
Yeah, I think if we get the news that he's in, even if he's out, I think they got a good shot. But with him in, I definitely think it's a go. Spartans playing better, good win against Michigan. We know both these teams go to the under. That's where I'd look, but that's where I had this total. It's just there. So I don't want to move on the under. I think Wisconsin, there was a couple of games these teams that have struggled. There might be another one, but Illinois, Colorado State, these teams that were losing come back home, and I just wish I laid the 7 with them, but I was a little too scared. I think this is a nice one, Wisconsin at home. Always tough, and it could be a nail-biter. Home teams have been good lately, in the series the last couple of years. Home teams won. So it'd be Wisconsin for me or nothing.
And the Badgers 6-1 straight up here at the Kohl Center in Madison. The only loss was that Wake Forest game that I remember very well earlier in the season.
They lost by 2 or 3, right?
Yeah, the Wake Forest as a dog beat them outright, no doubt. And that's still the only home loss this year for the Badgers. So I like this spot here for them tonight to get the job done and bounce back strong. All right, Florida and LSU, SEC. We've got Florida 2-point road favorites, 136.5 the total in this game. Florida, this is interesting. Sometimes we see in the line moves that the small road favorites, it's kind of like the last game where the money's often it goes against the small road favorite. Here in this game, the money's actually coming in on the small road favorite, and I agree with it. I mean, I like Florida here. I think Florida can win this game on the road. They're coming off a 82-75 win against Georgia. I know they had the loss at Auburn, but they were right in that game, and they covered the number, which was a good sign against a good Auburn team. I'm just not convinced LSU's that great. I mean, they beat Arkansas, and I thought maybe this LSU team's better than I thought. And I gave them a chance to show that to me, and they fell flat. They lost to Kentucky, who's been obviously underachieving, and then they not even in the game against A&M, 69-56. I still don't think the LSU is that great. I don't think they're anywhere close to the offensive team that they've been in years past. They're probably a little bit better defensively, but I think they're going to struggle here a little bit against Florida. Florida finally is starting to score the basketball the way we think they can. And defensively, 3 of the last 4 games for the Gators have been better in terms of getting stops. That was an issue earlier in their season, but I think you're starting to see them improve a little bit in that regard. You're not asking a lot, pretty much just win the game. You cash a ticket. Yeah, I'll go Florida here, money line in this one against LSU. And lean over the total as well. What do you think here, Connor?
LSU, not a good one. Against Texas A&M on Saturday. And here at home, they haven't been good against the number, but they're always laying points. I do not want this Florida team on the road, period. I'll wait maybe till they come back home. I just don't think they're that physical. And I'm not crazy about LSU, but I think LSU, I want them here. Back-to-back losses at home. Florida struggled too. They got blown out by West Virginia. What was their other one? Oh, in Oklahoma. That was a neutral game. Sorry. And that went. So was that? Is this? Oh, at Auburn they lost by 3.
No.
Okay. Still, LSU 2.5. I think I'm gonna have it on my card. I might just take a money line.
All right, next up here, we continue along. It is Oklahoma State and Kansas State, little Big 12 action here. Kansas State, 4.5, 5-point home favorites, 136.5 the total in this game. What a fun team they've become to watch, Kansas State. My goodness. I mean, can they run this offense or what? My goodness. They've had some huge games lately offensively. I mean, they're playing 82 against West Virginia. That's not a chopped liver defense. 116 against Texas. And then if you thought that was good, how about 97 against Baylor? Now, Baylor's had some defensive issues this year. We know they haven't been the same Baylor team, but this team's scoring at will right now. Kansas State, man,
It's
is
crazy.
crazy.
I
They're
just
pushing pace. They're scoring left and right. Connor, it's been incredibly fun to watch, and and it's been really Noel's been just terrific. Marquise Noel's been just a terrific player for Kansas State this year. Keontae Johnson stepped up. They're getting some secondary contributions from Carter, Tomlin as well. But Noel and Johnson have been the big cogs here for Kansas State. There's no question about that. Fun to watch. I'm not stepping in front of K-State. They've got something good going on right now. They've been undervalued. Not only are they 8-0 straight up, they're 6-2 against the spread during that time. They're 8-0 straight up on the home floor here at Bramlage Coliseum, the Little Apple. And Oklahoma State, they've kind of slumped a little bit here. 2 of the last 3 they've lost, although they were competitive at Kansas, beat West Virginia at home, lost by 10 against Texas in their last game. They've trended under, but man, Kansas State, doesn't matter who they play. They're pulling everybody into points. They're pulling everybody into their level of pace, and they're rolling with it right now. So, I lean a little to K-State at 4.5, 5. I don't know if I'll lay that because the one thing we're seeing with K-State here, Connor, is we are seeing a couple overtime games, couple of close games, not necessarily conducive to laying points. They've been dogs a lot of the time during this run they've put together, or small favorites. Now you're asking them to lay 5. That's a little different. So I'd still lean Kansas State, but the better bet for me is the over. I definitely like that here. I think it's low enough, 136.5 at DraftKings right now. They actually bet this thing under, and maybe they think Oklahoma State's going to get their pace, their preferred tempo, and slow this thing down to a crawl. And they are going to want to do that. Oklahoma State, make no mistake about it. But no opponent has gotten Kansas State to play their pace as of late, and I'm not convinced the Cowboys will either. So I like over the total. Connor, what do you think?
I mean, can this continue this scoring? I mean, 2 road wins that were huge. Texas and Baylor. You mentioned Johnson, Noel, Carter, Tomlin, all these guys just filling the bucket. It's just stretched out. It would open 3.5. It's moved to 5.5. You kind of hit on it. Now they're favorites here at home. I kind of want to lean Oklahoma State, but I think I'm going to be off in the end. Does it continue here? Maybe. I think this is just a watch for me. This maybe could be a little bit flat for Oklahoma or Kansas State tonight.
2 huge wins, and now you come back home. 2 huge road wins at Texas and Baylor, and now you come back home, right?
I mean, it shouldn't be a home game. I don't know. I think this could be tight.
That does concern. That's another reason why I'm pumping the brakes on laying it with Kansas State. This is big road wins as underdogs, outright as underdogs, Texas, Baylor, and now back home. It does smell like maybe just a little flat spot. I hope not, but maybe, and that's concerning enough for me. All right, Texas Tech, Iowa State. Iowa State 5.5 point home favorites, 128.5 the total in this game. This is a very low total, and we know Iowa State is, for years, especially the last couple under Otzelberger, they've been very capable defensively. And Texas Tech, we know long-term is, a defensive-minded basketball team. But be careful with this. This is 120s. I mean, we're not asking for much here to push this game over the total. I think the over's worth a small look here. Is it my favorite play on the card or my favorite total? No, but, 3 of the last 4 for Iowa State have gone over. And we're talking, then their totals have consistently been in the 120s, 130s. Well, in Big 12 play, 3 of the 4 have gone over this number. So keep that in mind. For Texas Tech, you look at their recent games, 2 of the last 3 in Big 12 play have gone over this number. The TCU game had 128, so it would have fallen half a point below this total right now of 128.5 right now. I just think it's just a little too low, and it can get up and over the number a little bit here in this game. And as far as the side goes, look, I do not I do not bet against Iowa State at home unless they're laying a bigger number. And, they're laying a moderate number here. They're not laying enough, or they're not laying to the point where, okay, they're laying 9. Let's now go against them. No, 5.5 is still a little too short for me to go against Iowa State at home. That being said, I'm always, kind of interested in Texas Tech when they're catching points, and they have completely dominated Iowa State. 8 straight point spread covers, 7 wins in those 8 games in the series history against Iowa State. So for that reason, I lean Texas Tech just because of the series history, catching points, but I don't love going against Iowa State at the Hilton. What do you think here, Connor?
Yeah, that Iowa State defense, at home. I thought this was it's been moved up a little bit. Like you mentioned, they've gone over, but I know Texas Tech, once again, in conference play, they've had, they get into more 60s style games. I mean, that Oklahoma game went to OT, it still stayed under. I mean, that was an ugly one. I mean Texas Tech here. I don't love it. And the total I thought was right there. I just think it's a little too low for me to hit the under in the end.
All right, Seton Hall, Georgetown. Seton Hall, 9-point road favorites, 141.5 being the total in this game. Obviously, for Seton Hall, it's been really up and down for them this year. Only 1-4 straight up on the road. They have had some pretty rough road performances overall, but they could probably get the job done here at home against Georgetown at home. They have no home court edge, none at all. None at all. The 3 Big East home games, if you think the road games have been bad, look at the home games. They lost by 13 to Xavier, 29 to Butler, 16 to Villanova at home, 0-3 against the spread. I'm actually going to lay it here with Seton Hall. Small bet because, again, they're a little sketchy offensively, but I don't know how Georgetown, quite honestly, in this game is going to score. I mean, they couldn't score against Villanova at home. They couldn't score against Butler at home. The one thing Seton Hall's doing is turning things up defensively. 2 of the last 3 games have been very good for them at that end of the floor. You expect that under a coach like Shaheen Holloway. I'm going to go with Seton Hall here. 0-3 against the number as home team here in Big East play for Georgetown. No home court edge. Nobody's going out to see Georgetown basketball when they suck every single year. So Seton Hall to me is the way to go. Seton Hall or nothing. I mean, I can understand the trepidation and the hesitancy to lay 9 on the road with them, but I don't think there's an alternative where you say, yeah, let's take Georgetown. No, not for me. What do you think here, Con?
Am I good? Sorry, it sounded like I was cutting out. I got a massive storm here in Vegas.
You're good.
Am I good? Okay. The one thing I'd lean over, but you mentioned those last few games when they couldn't score, at home with Villanova, those games, it's like Georgetown's got to score in this one for it to get over. Seton Hall's got to probably get to the 80s, and they got to get in the 60s. That was the only thing that kept me off this over in this one. And on the side, I'd lean Seton Hall, the better defense. I'm not in it here to lay doubles right now on too many teams on the road, even in conference play, even how bad Georgetown's been. I'll be off.
All right, next up here, we've got North Carolina and Virginia in the ACC. Virginia, 4.5, 5-point home favorites, 133 looks like to be the total now in this one. Virginia, we'll see how they fare. Obviously, their season so far has been a little bit of a mixed bag of everything. 11-3, 7-1 they are at home. But 3 of the last 4 they have won, but they haven't exactly been great from a point spread perspective. 1-9 ATS in their last 10 games. So they have really had a hard time covering numbers. They've had a hard time covering numbers as favorites. In all of those games but one, they were favored. And the only game they've covered as favorites was at Georgia Tech. So that's not easy to say that about Virginia, or that's not easy to lay points with them right now. I'd actually lean to North Carolina a little bit here. Plus the points in this one. I definitely kind of lean that direction here. They've been a little sketchy, at times, North Carolina, especially on the road. They lost by 12 at Indiana, 8 at Virginia Tech. They lose outright as road favorites at Pitt, 76-74. So they've had their issues. They've trended over, though, 6 straight overs. Don't look now, Virginia shot the ball a little bit better. 2 of the last 3 wins, especially Syracuse and Georgia Tech. Games went over the total, 3 in a row, in fact, to the over. Between these 2 teams. So I've actually got a small bite on this over here, 133 the total in this game. It'd be dogging the over for me, essentially, in this one. What do you think here, Connor?
What gives? North Carolina, up-tempo, over. Virginia slow under. But they've been a lot better at home. These points with a basketball team like this, I talk about all the time. Virginia, they could win this game at being at home by 8 or 9. I don't want to sweat it in the end, so I'm just going to be off. This one's a good one for North Carolina. If they could go in there and win, and just with Virginia being so bad against the number, I don't want them in this one.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I do lean to North Carolina here with the points. I haven't bet North Carolina. I've only bet the over so far, and it's probably going to stay that way. I probably will just stick to the over, getting there at 133. All right, we've got Vandy and Tennessee. Tennessee 18-point home favorites, and the total here 133 across the board. It's kind of like the South Carolina game. I just don't know if Tennessee should be laying this many. I know they're undefeated at home and 6-1 against the spread as well. On their home floor here, the for the Tennessee Volunteers, no question about that. But let's keep in mind some recent series history. You have to go all the way back to since February of 2020. There's been 5 head-to-head meetings, and only in one of those has Tennessee won by more than this point spread. They won a single game by 20, and other than that, they've won by 4, by 12, by 8, and by 9 against Vanderbilt. So we've seen Vanderbilt have some ability to compete. Vanderbilt, not great defensively the last 2 games in particular, but I'll tell you what, offensively, they've been better. They've started to find their mojo offensively. Remember, Scottie Pippen Jr. was their best scorer last year, and they miss him dearly, especially early in the season. But now all of a sudden they're starting to find some continuity and better play at that end of the basketball court going into this game here against Tennessee. Again, when you're talking about this Volunteers team, when they're laying this many points, especially in conference play, I'm not always willing to trust them necessarily. Now, they've had some absolute demolitions the last 2 against Mississippi State and South Carolina, but we have seen evidence of Vanderbilt being able to compete and hang tough against this team, not to mention Vanderbilt as road dogs. The last 2 times, NC State lost by 4, 5.5-point dogs, and then at Missouri in their last game, 8-point dogs lose by 3, just a few too many points for me. So Vanderbilt at the plus 18 is where I'm looking. And maybe this game could sneak over the number as well. What do you think, Conor?
I don't know. I don't want this thing at all. The Tennessee's so good at home, and just the defense, the strangle they have. I mean, where it's these rankings, they're right there, top 3 in the country in a ton of categories. I think they do better a Vandy team on the road, like against Missouri. That was more up and down. But you mentioned the last few years, they've covered, and this is a huge number. I just don't want anything to do with it. I think they win by 20 plus, or it's a 5-point game. So, I mean, I'm off.
All right, next up here, we've got Auburn, Ole Miss. That's what's next up. Auburn, 1.5, 2-point road favorites, 133 the total in this game. This kind of feels like a game Auburn might lose, and I was leaning Ole Miss initially. All right, I was leaning Ole Miss initially because at home they've been a little bit better than they've been on the road. I know on the road they got blasted by Mississippi State and Alabama, but they almost beat Tennessee here at home, 63-59 loss. They were able to compete in that game, but I remember taking Ole Miss last year against Auburn, and Auburn beat them pretty handily both games. Auburn took control and won both games, covered both games as well against Ole Miss. So, and I don't know if you're getting enough points now with it only being 1.5 now in this game for the Ole Miss Rebels. So for that reason, I'm probably going to lay off the game. I leaned Ole Miss. I still do, but I'm going to keep off it now. What do you think, Conor?
I thought that was a good win by Auburn on Saturday. It was solid. That wasn't on really big. Ole Miss has been very good to the under. I missed it too. It was 3. I kind of leaned their way. And I've been impressed with Auburn's defense. Can they keep it up? Through SEC play is the key. So I'm off in the end. I don't trust the Rebels enough, to just score, game on the line. So it's just keeping me off.
All right, Villanova, DePaul. We go back to the Big East. Villanova, 6.5-point road favorites, 141 being the total in this game. It's another one where it's probably a stay away game for me. I mean, Villanova laying 6.5 on the road. I mean, in theory, they should play well. after a loss at home to Xavier 88-80. But, that's 3 of their last 4 games they've lost. Now, obviously, it's been to much better competition. UConn, Marquette, Xavier. I mean, there's 3 of the best teams in the Big East right there. So it's not like you can really fault Nova for losing those games. This should be a step down in class. They should be able to handle their business here against DePaul and handle it they did last year, 67-43 and 79-64, double-digit victories for Villanova in both of those games. I would only take Villanova, don't get me wrong. I mean, I don't want DePaul. It's Villanova or nothing, but I don't know. If the more I watch Villanova, I just don't think they're anywhere close at the moment to what we saw last year, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, through much of the Jay Wright era. I don't think the guard play is as good. I don't think their defensive game is as consistent from one game to the next. In theory, this should be the spot for them to do what they did last year and beat down DePaul twice, and maybe they will, and they could. I leaned Villanova, but I'm pumping the brakes. I mean, I'm not loving what I'm seeing right now from Nova. Should win, but I'm going to just stay off this one, even though I do lean to the road favorite in a bounce back spot. What do you think, Con?
Yeah, I'm not going to bet this, but I lean Nova in this one. I think they're not as good. You went through all that, but this was a good bounce back. DePaul's been playing a little bit better as of late, but they still turn the ball over. Sloppy team. I think Nova can get it done. Maybe look early. Yeah, it's a pass.
And also, I don't, it's also shocking, not shocking, but concerning about Villanova is, on the road, they've been hit or miss. They weren't great in beating St. John's. They were good the last time they were on the road, 73-57 at Georgetown. They won by 16. That's what they should be able to do here against DePaul tonight. So again, I wouldn't talk anyone out of Villanova, because I'm telling you what, that's the only side I would consider backing in this game. I'm just a little hesitant, but we both lean Villanova in this one for sure. All right, Oklahoma, Kansas. We've got Kansas 10.5-point home favorites in this game. 133 the total. I like the Sooners here. I really do. In fact, don't be shocked if this is a tight game down to the wire between these 2 teams. Oklahoma, I'll tell you what, the last 4 games, they beat Florida on a neutral, lost by 1 to Texas, lost by 3 to Iowa State. They were right in that game. They beat Texas Tech in overtime on the weekend, 68-63 on the road. They haven't been blown out in any Big 12 game. Now, Kansas certainly has blowout potential for any opponent, the way they've played. They beat Indiana by 22 on this floor, 14 over Harvard. They beat down West Virginia on the road, 76-62 in their last game, beat Texas Tech on the road. But their last home game, they were laying double digits in Big 12 play, just like they are here, and they survived by the skin of their teeth against Oklahoma State, 69-67. This is an Oklahoma team that slowly but surely, I like the way they're defending. I like the way their team basketball overall game is starting to come into fruition, which has been good to see. No question about that. Look, they're going to slow things down, which they have to do in this game. The number just looks a little high, in my opinion. And keep in mind, last year, these 2 teams played twice, like they do every year. They played twice in Big 12 conference play. Kansas won by 2 at home and 3 on the road last year. Down to the wire, both games. Never did we see Kansas pull away and win by margin. So I like the Sooners here, getting double digits on the road. Give me Oklahoma. What do you think here, Connor?
Well, Oklahoma can stay in this is because of their defense. That's just it. This team's played well. We know defense, even basketball, it travels. I thought Hill, some of these guys have played a lot better. But in a game like this, Sherfield's got to be the guy. He's basically their only pure shooter. So he has a solid game, at least 15 or more. I think they can hang around too. Kansas very good, obviously, at home. I just think this is a little bit too much. So I'm leaning Oklahoma here in the 10.5.
All right.
A little under. They've been great to the under for me. I mean, we obviously have a low total just to lean there.
And Kansas actually, Kansas and Oklahoma State, the last home game, and Oklahoma State's going to play. Oklahoma is going to do what Oklahoma State did: slow it down, half-court defense, make them execute, make them work the shot clock. That game stayed under, and this one might as well. So, because Oklahoma is going to try to follow that blueprint that Oklahoma State did in Kansas's last home game, get this game in more of a half-court scrum, if you will. So I think for that reason, probably do lean a little bit to the under at 133. All right, next up here, Illinois, Nebraska, Big Ten action. Illinois 3-point road favorites, 139 the total. I'm on the Illini here, a rare road favorite for me. I just find, you know what, they went through the abyss, they went through the struggles and the turmoil, and it looked like things were falling apart for Illinois. But then they rallied the troops, and they got a nice performance there against Wisconsin, 79-69. Now, they got to show on the road they're capable, definitely. And Nebraska's definitely been one of the surprises this year, a little bit, that they've played a lot better than people thought. But, now let's see how they fare here. Remember, they did lose to Purdue at home here on this home floor earlier in Big Ten play. They do have the win against Iowa as well. But, I think if you would have told me earlier this season you would have gotten Illinois this cheap on the road, you probably, would have, taken Illinois here. And, yeah, I know Nebraska's been impressive, no question about that. But last year, Illinois was in Nebraska, and they won 81-71 against the Cornhuskers. And keep in mind, the point spread in that game, which is why I like Illinois, why I think the value is the Illini here. They're the better roster, better personnel. Nebraska's overachieved. So I think it's sell high time on Nebraska. And I think for Illinois, it's buy low. Finally snap the skid. They're going to, I think, get on a little bit of a run here. Illinois was laying 12.5 on the road here at Nebraska last year. Now they're only laying 3. I mean, you talk about point spread value. That to me is point spread value. Because like I said, Illinois wouldn't have been laying anything close to this short of a number before their struggles and before Nebraska obviously showed this drastic improvement to this point in the season. So buying low and selling high. That's what I'm doing here with Illinois. What do you think here, Conor?
Yeah, that was a great second half by Illinois in a win they really needed. But I'm not betting them on the road until I got to see it. And maybe this is a good game here against Nebraska. But Nebraska's been great to me, to the under. I lean that way. Initially, I get why it moved up, but I think this might have gone a little too far. Can Nebraska keep playing, a little bit slower? They don't score great. I know that game went to OT and went over on Saturday. Home team's been good against the number. You talk, though, bigger number the last few years, or not 3.5, but 6-1 the last 7. So I'm off the side and I lean under. Now it's at 139.
There you go. Lean under off the side, but lean under. All right, final game of the marquee games here, Nevada and San Diego State. Little late night. This is the latest start time on the board tonight, 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific on the West Coast in Viejas Arena in San Diego. The Aztecs, 9-point home favorites, 137 the total in this game, 137.5, 138 at other spots. So make sure you shop around. And that's important because I do like the over in this game. I think it gets there. San Diego State is not that, dead nuts under team, that we've seen for so many years. They've gone over now in 2 straight with UNLV and Wyoming. Nevada's going to try to push the pace a little bit. They're not crazy up and down the court type of team, Nevada, but they're above average in terms of tempo. They're going to try to, get in transition, speed this game up a little bit. And they were able to do that last year. 2 of the meetings against San Diego State last year went over the total between these 2 teams. So keep that in mind. Nevada's gone over for their last 5 games. Like I said, there have been certain teams that have been able to get San Diego State playing quicker. UNLV, Wyoming managed to have it happen. Arkansas earlier this year, another team that plays above average pace-wise. They got an over out of San Diego State earlier. How about Arizona? That game stayed under a huge total, but it still got to 157. The BYU game early in the season, another example of that, got San Diego State to speed things up a little, and it went over the total. So, again, we're not talking about a massive and a big total here. We're only talking 137, 138. I think both teams can be efficient enough, and pace will be good enough to get over the total. And keep in mind, note San Diego State's offensive improvement the last 3 games, where they've averaged well into the mid-70s in points. So that's certainly capable of continuing here, in my opinion, tonight. So nothing on the side, but looking toward this game going over a modest total here in the high 130s. What do you think, Conor?
Yeah, I thought it was a tough spot for San Diego State to go on the road, even against a Wyoming team that's a little undermanned and cover. I just think this is too large. When these teams got together the last few years, these games have been tight. And I think this Nevada team's better. the lone thing with San Diego State, I don't want to, even at home, I really don't want to lay 10 with them, even though they could cover this number. I lean to the Wolfpack a little bit. Alfred's had these guys play great. Their offenses have been good. Both these teams, like you mentioned, they score 73. Does Nevada? Good numbers. San Diego State, their pace is up 75, but good defenses still. San Diego State, 91. And I've been surprised how Nevada's defense have played. Maybe the competition hasn't been great, but 51st in the country at 63. So I'm off the total in this one. Lean Nevada.
And Nevada's covered 5 straight against San Diego State. And last year, you mentioned it with the 2 meetings, 2-point game, 1-point game, the 2 head-to-head meetings between the Aztecs and the Wolfpack. So maybe it is too many points. And yeah, I'm certainly in that same category as well. I would lean Nevada +9 if I were to bet the side in this one. All right, those are the marquee games. 158 live viewers on YouTube. Shout out to everyone in the chat, but hit that like button. We appreciate it very much. It helps us out. Make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you become a Pub Sports Radio YouTube channel subscriber and member as well. $4.99 a month, 18 cents a day. It is absolutely worth it. So make sure you get involved with that. All right, we actually probably talked about 75 to 80% of the card already with all of the marquee games. So we didn't leave a lot, but Conor, there's not too many games we haven't talked about yet, but if there are any we haven't talked about and games you like from that group, what would they be?
Kent State. I just don't trust Toledo on the road, but I think the better look is their team total, right around 77.5, 78.5. I think they get to 80. They had a close game over the weekend on the road, but Toledo just can't stop anybody. You could maybe look, I don't know if they get there. Kent State's defense has been pretty good. They still might get there, Toledo. But I think Kent State, if you're worried about laying the number, I think their team total there's a good look. I think they get to 80 against Toledo. And I'm going to this under. Murray State, the game with Drake that went over, I was on the under on Saturday. But Northern Iowa is an under team. Get these two together. I had this total line like more 134. It's at 138. I disagree. So I'm on the under in that game. I think that's about it. The two that was on. I kind of am looking at Bowling Green slightly. You're getting 4 at home. But that was it.
All right, that was it. Yeah, I have not bet many other games than what we talked. There's a couple. Belmont Valpo over at 142. I'm on the total there, up and over the number. I kind of like Ball State the way they're playing, although I feel this is one of those, Ohio shows up and gets a desperately needed win. They're off a couple of losses in a row. They're laying a short number at home. And Ohio, I don't think they're complete garbage. They're still a good team in them. Maybe they getting back home is what cures what ails them. So I'll be off Ball State. I initially leaned Ball State, but the spot definitely points to Ohio.
I'm the same. Real quick, it just seems like Ohio at home can get this, but I'm high on this Ball State team. They're pretty solid. So in the end, I'll be off.
Yeah, exactly. It's exactly the way I felt. I am on Fordham. Give me the Rams +7.5 against Dayton. I know Dayton started to play a lot better lately, but
great.
Fordham, I think, can hang around. And it's going to be a low pace, low possession, defensive-minded battle between these two teams. Probably stays under, but I like 7.5 points on the home floor with the home dog there in Fordham in that game. What else did I look at here? Funny you mentioned Toledo, Kansas State. I actually kind of like the other side in that game, Toledo, +4, because you don't get Toledo as a dog very often. If you're going to take them, this is now the time catching points, because you're right. They're all offense, very little, if any, defense. I think this is the right time to maybe grab Belmont, buy low. They've got some ups and downs. Kent State's been rocking, but Kent State's also struggled to cover some numbers, and they got to win now by 5+ against a very potent team. So Toledo over of some kind, whether it's Toledo team total over, Toledo plus the points, or the full game over. I know why they're betting the under, because Kent State's defense has been good, but I think they're betting it too low. I'm always willing to take my chances with a Toledo game over the total when it's in the low 150s. So that's probably what I'll do here.
Yeah, that's why I stay away from the spread and just look team total.
Yeah.
Kent State.
Yeah, you mentioned Murray State, Northern Iowa, the under, right? That's what you like there?
Yep.
I like Murray State there. I like the side. I like Murray State. I mean, I'm going to dare Northern Iowa to win by margin, which is not something they've done easily. And I think for Murray State, these are opportunities. They're the newbie this year in the Missouri Valley Conference. Remember, this team's been in the OVC for many years. This is their first year in the MVC. Point to prove. They know Northern Iowa's always been one of the, I guess, top 4 or 5 teams consistently in this conference for years. I like Murray State. And if you actually look at it, Northern Iowa is home favorites this year. Oh, it's been bad, really bad as home favorites for the Northern Iowa Panthers. So I like Murray State there. The Racers, hopefully they'll race to the win column tonight against Northern Iowa.
Real quick with Clark's question here. I agree. It's his hand. I never like that. He's a guy that needs the ball in his hand. So even if he plays, maybe they do cover. It's just a lean for me with BG.
Yeah, there we go. Wyoming and Utah State. As far as that game goes, look, I know they're really banged up right now, Wyoming. There's a lot of injuries. I get it, but it's a few too many points. It's a few too many points, and I'm going to take my chances with Wyoming. Hell, they've been competitive even with the injuries. The last few games. It's some pretty solid teams in the Mountain West. That effort against San Diego State over the weekend was outstanding. In fact, they led a good portion of that game. I think they can hang tough with Utah State. I like that. And I lean over the total. I like the over as well. I'll probably bet that over. It looks a little low. 141 in that game, Wyoming and Utah State. So I'm with you there. VCU, Loyola's a pass for me. I can't figure out VCU. I'm done trying to figure out Loyola Chicago. That team has frustrated the living hell out of me. No more. That's it. Pass. I want nothing to do with Loyola games right now.
That's how I feel. Touch on the Wyoming game. I think there's no Reynolds there. But I'm not running to Utah State. I think they've been okay lately. They haven't looked great. So, yeah, I'm off in that one. I guess you could look Wyoming. They just haven't been great on the road. But you're getting 10.
Yeah, defensive-minded dog in that Fresno San Jose State game. I wish I was a few more points, but I do lean Fresno there, +3, +3.5 against San Jose State. And someone mentioned Akron, Bowling Green. Akron's not been great offensively. They've kind of trended under. Bowling Green's the opposite. Bowling Green, we like to bet overs with them. I'm going to say Bowling Green at home dictates pace. For that reason, I'm going over 141 in that Akron Bowling Green game. I'm going to play that one over.
All right.
There you go. I believe that's the end of the Q&A. And I think we've pretty much covered just about every. I think let me just see. I think we've said something. Oh, Eastern Michigan, Western Michigan's a pass for me. I have no interest in that. So I'm not going to say a lean because I have none in that game. Drake, Illinois, Chicago. Drake probably wins, but I'm not 100% comfortable laying 11. With them on the road. Central Michigan, Northern Illinois. I think Central actually might be the better team there, but I ended up passing in that one as well. And I think the only one we have not talked about yet from all indications here is Temple and Tulsa. And I actually did lay 3.5 with Temple. I think Tulsa's pretty pathetic right now. If you ask me, they're a horrendous basketball team, and I don't know if it's going to get any better for them. They can't stop anything on defense, Tulsa. Absolutely terrible. So Temple, again, road favorites in conference play, always a little dicey, and Temple's had some duds this year, but man, I still think they're good enough and better than Tulsa enough to cover as 3.5-point favorites on the road.
I lean over a little bit in that one. Like you mentioned, Tulsa can't stop anything.
Absolutely awful on the defensive end of the court. All right, great stuff. There we go. We said something about every game on the card because obviously it's a little bit of a shorter card here for a Tuesday. Hit the like button. Best bets coming up right after we hear from Manscaped and Southtown 101. Southtown 101. When you're in San Antonio, Texas, stop in. Great food, drinks, live music, DJs, karaoke, Southtown 101, and manscaped.com. Promo code PubSports, 20% off and free shipping with promo code PubSports. All right. Yeah, Buffalo, Miami O. You're right. We didn't say anything on that. I'm taking Miami O or nothing. I mean, I'm not laying 3.5 with
Me
Buffalo.
too.
Buffalo's been too erratic for me. You know what? The over, yeah, but it was very high. Buffalo hasn't even been that automatic over team either this year. So I'm not even all that excited about the over in that game, honestly. So
yeah, I'm not laying the points with
Yeah.
Buffalo. No way. No how.
Not on the road.
And you're right. That's total's got hit too. 5 points to the under.
Yeah, that's a huge move to the under. And normally I don't give two shits about totals moves that or any line move. But when you're talking about a college basketball, which has not got the handle that football does, and it's a 5-point move, you got to pay some respect to it when it moves that much. So, yeah, I'm off that game. All right, best bets here to wrap it up. First best bet segment of the week. Conor Mack, what do you got for best bet?
Because of Wall, I can't give Wisconsin. That's a weight. But Murray State, Northern Iowa under 138. You can even look first half there. And I'm taking Oklahoma. 10.5 too much. I think they mucked that up and at least keep it close with Kansas.
All right, there you go. Best bets for Conor. And we have a common best bet. I have two best bets. I'm going with two tonight. One of them is Oklahoma, plus 10.5 against Kansas. I mean, we've seen them have no trouble competing with the Jayhawks. 2- and 3-point game last year in the two meetings. Oklahoma's hasn't lost by this kind of margin in conference play yet. And keep in mind, Kansas, the last time they played a team with the same kind of playing style as Oklahoma was Oklahoma State, and they were life and death to escape. So I like Oklahoma as well, plus 10.5 against Kansas. That's the first best bet. The other best bet for me, I'm going with this Murray State side. Plus 4, minus 120 at Pinnacle. If you can only find 3.5, it's 3.5. There's a couple 4s out there. Even at 3.5, it's still a best bet worthy type of play for me. Murray State. Plus 3.5, plus 4 against Northern Iowa. In fact, I think they could win that game outright. So Murray State plus the points, Oklahoma plus the points. And you know what? I'll give you a third best bet too. I really think this is buy low and a great number. You're not going to get this number very often on the Toledo Rockets tonight. Plus 4 against Kent State. I'm going to go with that too. So 3 Dog Night, if you will. The great band. Remember them from the 60s and 70s?
Oh, yeah.
3 Dog Night, great music they had. 3 Dog Night for yours truly on the Net Profit Show here. 3 Dogs, hopefully 3-0 sweep, 2-1 at worst. Kent State, Murray State, or not Kent State, sorry, I don't want to screw anyone up here. Toledo, Murray State, and Oklahoma. There you go. Toledo, Murray State, and Oklahoma. 3 Dogs. Let's see if we can cash them tonight. 3 best bets here for the Tuesday edition of the Net Profit Show. All right, there we go. Great show, Conor, to get the week started. Great card tomorrow. A lot of good games, bigger card tomorrow. So make sure you join us 5 p.m. Eastern for another edition of the Net Profit Show on Wednesday. And join Jimmy the Bag and Andy Molitor for Gridiron Gamblers. Wild Card Weekend NFL preview coming up tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern, right here on Pub Sports Radio. So make sure you tune in for that. For Conor Mack, I'm Ian Cameron. Have a great Tuesday night. Enjoy the games and good luck. Over in the Belmont Valpo game. I mentioned it, Rem Most. That's what I'm on there. Over. There you go. Thanks for watching. Have a great Tuesday night. We'll see you again tomorrow on Wednesday for another edition of the Net Profit College Basketball Show right here on Pub Sports Radio.